Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. Sorry we're a few minutes late today, but we've got a cool new background for you guys. You can check it out behind me. Also, as always, I'll be your host, Nick axslav Ranish. But before we get into today's episode, let me tell you a little bit about next week. So next week, we're not going to have the same Rules of Engagement format. Instead, what we're going to do is first, at 5 p.m. Eastern, there's going to be some great Winter Showdown matches, all qualifiers for Dallas, all best of fives. The winner of each best of five will qualify for Dallas, starting with great matches like Partying versus Fantasy, continuing on with all world-class players, world-class Starcraft 2, Heart of the Swarm action. We've never seen players of this caliber really play much Heart of the Swarm yet, so it's going to be amazing to watch. And Rules of Engagement is going to be focused on analyzing this new, super top-level Heart of the Swarm matches that we have. So, the Monday's match. On Tuesday, we're going to be analyzing that match on Rules of Engagement. On Wednesday, we'll analyze Tuesday's match on Rules of Engagement, etc. So, the next, if you watch whatever match, you tune and watch it at 5, you say, wow, that was cool. I wanted to know exactly what went on in that match, what led to that player's victory. Go in the next day and check out the Rules of Engagement episode, and we'll explain everything exactly, the nitty-gritty tactics these pro gamers have been using. Also, instead of airing every day at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're now going to have Rules of Engagement directly after the best of 5 match that starts at 5 p.m. Eastern. That match may be an hour long, it may be 2 hours long, it may even be something like 50 minutes long, but as soon as that match ends, we'll get everything set up and get Rules of Engagement on directly after that. So it might not always be exactly at 7 Eastern next week. It's just whenever the showdown qualifier match before it ends, we want to keep that non-stop content going for you guys. So that's what's going on next week. I'm really excited. Of course, next Monday is just going to be a normal Talking Tactics, just analyzing the competitive play. But after that, it's going to be all analyzing the gameplay of the qualifier match the day before. Today's episode is going to be the self-reflection day, as always, not in the future it'll be different, but today is still self-reflection for Friday. I've got a couple great replays to go over for you guys. So we're going to start off with a replay that I'm going to title The Hellbat. And it's going to be a TVP, me playing and showing kind of how you can use Hellbats. And then the next replay is going to be The Hellbat Reloaded. And that's going to be, again, a TVP using Hellbats again. And then it's going to be The Hellbat Revolutions. And that's going to be a TVZ featuring mainly the Hellbat. Of course, other units will be introduced here as well. But, I've been experimenting a lot with Terran and Heart of the Swarm. Just kind of, they have a lot of cool new units. I've wanted to play around with them to understand them at a higher level. And so I've spent the last couple days just really trying to figure out the Hellbat and what it's good at, what it's bad at. So today's Friday episode will be all about the Hellbat. Well, and some Ravens wouldn't mind throwing in, but mostly the Hellbat. So, and of course, at the end of the episode is going to be Q&A. Any questions you got, send them to me on Twitter at @ISAxslav. Let's jump into the first section, the Hellbat, Axslav vs. Pixie, right now. So, in this replay, what's going to be... there we go. So, we're first going to start off talking about, basically, how you can counter the... the Stalker Poke using a reactor factory in multiple ways. Then we're going to talk about how using the early basic factory units, the Hellions, the Widow Mines, etc. Those ones you can get very early in the game. And then we're going to talk about Hellbats as an army, right? And you might be thinking of the Hellion as a harass unit and maybe just something you see every once in a while to poke around your opponent. But in Heart of the Swarm, you can actually turn them to Hellbats, which are much stronger in straight combat. So you can use them as an actual army. We'll take a look at how that actually works. So let's jump into the game here, and we're going to start off about the 5:30 mark. And what I've done is I've done just a pretty standard reactor Hellion opening. Gas first, so I get the factory very fast. Reactor out 2 Widow Mines very early on. And also I'm going to be momentarily going to start, or I've already started proxy starport across the map. So one cool thing is Protoss often, they're always in the dark about what Terran's doing early. And a probe will have a hard time getting past the Marine Scout, so often high-level Protoss players will send in a Zealot Stalker or one or the other. So one of their military units to get in your face as a Terran player early in the game and try to figure out what you're doing, maybe even pick off a Marine or two. But if you open with the Reactor Factory, you can get these Widow Mines out before the Stalker even gets to your base. As soon as it crosses the map, it gets blown up. And you know what? That's a free unit kill, right? One free unit kill already, and that Stalker actually costs as much as both Widow Mines combined almost. So they've already paid themselves off. It's just a great little advantage you get from Reactor onto Widow Mines. Now let's say you reactor out Hellions instead. You can have 4 Hellions at that point because they build fast in Widow Mines, and 4 Hellions can easily out-micro a Stalker and defeat it as well. So whichever route you go, Widow Mines or Hellions, if they try to Stalker poke you, you will get that unit kill right off the bat, which is a really nice little bit of an advantage. So now, if you want to utilize your early game units, right, these Widow Mines, if your opponent has a substantial number of units hanging around, which they often do, it can be very difficult to get your Widow Mines really past units without dying. So a medevac's a great way to move these Widow Mines at a faster pace, you know, avoid them getting picked off by Stalkers. Now the question is, where should you drop them? So I dropped one kind of early, and the idea behind that in my mind was I was hoping I could put the Widow Mine, kind of get it near the ramp, and then control the ramp. So he's less comfortable moving units up and down the ramp, and then I could exploit that later on with rallied support units. Unfortunately, it probably wasn't a smart idea. I probably should have kept them all in the medevac. The other thing you can do is when your units get here, they're getting close to you, you can use the Ignite Afterburners ability to run over their army very quickly so you don't sustain much damage. And then you can drop the units into worker line wherever you want. Just hit the drop command, drop them all out, and you bury them there, and your opponent will almost... They might have one observer just started, but they're not going to have detection immediately. You can let them hit their explosions. You can notice I've already gotten 3 worker kills from those initial explosions. And then you pick them right back up again, and then you just run away. And of course, when you run away, you can try to drop them. At first, I was thinking I'd drop them again and kill some more probes. Unfortunately, that's not the smartest idea because their cooldown's still going on. So really, I really should have kept them in that medevac and just gotten the medevac away with the Ignite Afterburners. That could have gone away with no casualties, right? I've already killed a Stalker. I've killed 3 workers. I can get away with no casualties. As it is, it's not the end of the world, though, as I can burrow 1 Widow Mine to help control this little probe movement path, and then the other Widow Mine, I can just land here to help control the ramp. And then my original one, I used to have, I landed at start and moved it down to the natural worker line. So even though he knows these Widow Mines are here now, in fact, he actually doesn't realize this one's here. This is a little ninja Widow Mine hiding in the corner. Even if he moves the probes, he still is losing mine time until he can get around, get that observer, and clear up all these mines. So it is still paying off massively, even if you just force him to move his probes away. That's all you have to do to make these Widow Mines pay off, and they'll continue to attack. Their cooldown is actually pretty fast. It's every 40 seconds, which is about the build time of most gateway units. So continue to do damage throughout the game. I've already got racked to 9 worker kills. I'm going to get a few more. And even, I mean, if he played a little stronger, I might have gotten a few less kills. But it's still a decent opening to try out. But behind that, what I'm doing is I got 2 Widow Mines to help defend my base from any type of frontal attack, right? Any gateway units. I took a fairly quick command center in my base. And now I'm going to experiment with trying Hellbats out in the army. And I was thinking, you know what? The Hellbats, if we look at their combat stats, these guys are absolute beasts. If we scroll over here, we can see they do 18 damage a shot to armored units as opposed to Hellions 8. 30 damage to light units as opposed to Hellions 14. So they're over twice as good with each shot. And they have weapon speed 2 instead of 2.5, so they attack faster. And they have 135 life instead of 80 or 90 in the Hellion. So they're just amazing. They're like several times better than the Hellions in straight up combat. So what I do is let's just get a whole bunch of these. I'll get 3 different reactors, right? 3 different reactors on these factories. I've got the army here, upgrading the attack for them. And I'm just going to make a whole bunch of them. Once I get enough, I'll just move out and try experimenting using them in combat. And they're very cheap, too. They're the same price as a Zealot. Meanwhile, of course, I added a couple more medevacs because medevacs can heal them. And then turn them into the Hellion mode so I can cross the map very easily. And then once I get close to the side of the map, I can transform all to Hellbats and say, okay, now I've got these Hellbats, now I can go for the push. And if you look at this push, one thing to notice is this. So my army looks like it's way bigger than his, right? It looks like it is. But you know the funny thing is, if we count up the actual value in these units, it's actually pretty close. It's actually really close. If we look at the army tab value, he's got 350 more gas than me. I've got 1,000 more minerals, right? So I'm 600 ahead of him in army value. But then you have to count the fact that I've got 2 Hellbats here that aren't being engaged. So instead of being 600 ahead of him in army value, I'm really only 400 ahead. I've also got a Widow Mine here and a Widow Mine here because I thought there might be some Oracle harass. And so that's another 200 resources. So really, my army is only 200 resources ahead of his. And as soon as he warps into single round of guys, he'll actually have a stronger army as far as the amount of money he puts into it. So he'll put more money into his army than me. Of course, I have a much higher food than him, and that's because Hellbats are insanely cheap. They're like astronomically cheap. It's the same as if he just massed pure Zealots or Zerg massed pure Roaches, things that are very, very cheap for the food. So he's trying to use some force fields to get around me, but you can see the Hellbats just don't die. They absolutely don't die. And even if he gets a lot of cool force fields, one really neat trick you can do is you can grab your medevac, you can lift up the Hellions inside of it, right? And then you can use the Ignite Afterburners ability, and you can just jet over and land them right on top of those sentries, and look how fast those sentries die. Just about instantly. Even the Stalkers get died in 1 or 2 shots. So we can see here, I actually lost 1 or 0 Hellions in that battle. And as I pointed out before, I only had 200 more resources in my army than he did. And he actually warped in 2 Stalkers in the middle of that battle. Oops, let me fast forward it. So I only have 200 more resources than him in the army at this point, right? And then as we go through the battle, not only do I only have 200 more resources, but then as soon as he warps in his next round of units, which will be right here, now all of a sudden he's warping in 350 resources of units. So now he actually combined it kind of as a stronger army than me, as far as the money he put into it. But he made the mistake of not making Hellbats. I mean, of course he couldn't because he's not Terran, but the Hellbats in combat basically beat any unit in the game. At least pretty much any unit in a straight engagement. Now we're saying, isn't this horribly balanced? How come Terrans never lose in Heart of the Swarm? So the Hellbat has 2 weaknesses. One is it doesn't move particularly fast. And the other one is that it has very short range, right? It only has range of 2. So while it can pretty much clobber any unit if they just kind of smash and it can get into a brawl, if you can kite against it, Stalkers can kite against it, they can do very well. Or if they just use force fields to keep you at bay. So that's why they're particularly effective combined with medevacs. And a new medevac with the Ignite Afterburners, if your opponent tries to kite versus you, you can pick up Ignite Afterburners, drop behind him or drop on top of him, get that extra damage done. As well as a short range, if they force field, you can get around it in that situation as well. In an open field, though, if you just have pure Hellbats, you got to be very careful about things like Roaches, Marauders, even Marines, Stalkers. Anything with longer range and equal or greater move speed can kite you around in the hands of a skilled player. So Hellbats work really great as an army if you're on the attack and in someone's base. Then if he backs up, you just kill the Nexus, kill the probes. Or if you know that he can't run away from you, basically. Or if you combine them with something like a Siege Shank that forces your opponent to come to you. So Hellbats seem to work out pretty great in an army in a limited situation where you can force that straight-up engagement. We'll take a short break, then take another look at a replay, seeing some of the other strengths and weaknesses of Hellbats in the Hellbat Reloaded.